OVETT's love of competition meant that his training schedule lacked the more clinical approach of the COEs, often leaving Seb and his father bewildered.
Sometimes he could do the most outrageous things. I mean, I remember the weekend before he ran what for me is still the textbook 1500 metres. The week before that, he ran the Dartford half marathon. Now, I mean, that is effectively just ripping up the training book. That is, you know, I remember most coaches sort of reaching for their tranquilizers when they heard that this was his build-up.
And his natural exuberance, which spilled onto the track, was often misunderstood.
Thought he was the most arrogant bastard I'd ever seen on two legs. I mean, here we were in England, which is a tradition of the 1500 metres in the mile, and the nice tradition of the British runners where protocol played a nice, intricate part. Sure, you will raise your hands in victory, but to step out into lane 4 and do it, I mean, it just blew us all away.
Olympic champion John Walker had been on the receiving end of OVETT's devastating finishing kick on many occasions and on many tracks around the world.
Today, and Walker will be reduced to 4th place. OVETT first, Waigler second, and over it goes.
The World Cup in Dusseldorf, 1977. Steve OVETT set a new UK 1500-metre record in what was called his perfect race.
I didn't realise how fast it was because Steve was looking so good, and I could see he was looking around him as though to say, well, this is easy. This.
Who else is in the race? The wave is there, the confidence is there, and he's now chasing an incredibly fast time, a marvellous run.
Steve himself said, you know, I could have broken the world record tonight.
But surely nothing can stop him now, and he's already celebrating. OVETT wins in customary style.
By 1978, OVETT had made the 1500 metres his own.
I suppose it was always the gifted Steve OVETT who promised to achieve the most for Great Britain in these championships, and he certainly has delivered in the most spectacular style.
He had taken on the best and beaten them all. OVETT won the 1978 BBC Sports Personality of the Year, but his popularity with the press was at an all-time low.
The press promoted him as the bad boy of athletics right from the start. And I mean, he was in a no-win situation. Whether he went off and did everything nice or didn't do it nice, he was still going to get written up as the bad boy. So, as I say, he probably just felt to hell with them and he didn't want to know about it.
The press want to know why you're not doing things. You know, even if you say to them, look, I want an easy season, they say, why aren't you running in the Europa Cup? Why aren't you doing the World Cup? Why aren't you doing the Golden Mile? You know, they just won't accept the simple fact that you want to rest. You just want a break.
He took the unprecedented step of refusing to talk to the press at all. So that became the story.
If you'd had a good race or you did something good, you used to get this imperious demand from the press box. We wish to see so-and-so up in the press box. And then you'd go up there and you'd have all these questions shot at you. And Steve didn't like this idea, you know. He'd made his mark out there on the track. If somebody wanted to see him, they could come down and talk to him. But he didn't like this idea, so quite often he would say no.
And he just cut us off. And from then onwards, you know, we always ask, would OVETT come up, or what's he got to say? And we usually got the message from a meeting in the middle of August, you know, Merry Christmas, boys. That was the sort of thing he did. He had fun.
Some people need the press to reflect and to sort of to glory in what they did. Steve is very self-contained. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need the plaudits of the world. I think he appreciates the admiration of his fellow athletes. That, I think, is important to him. But the rest of the world, he can do without them.
Marvellous piece of front running.
If 1978 was the year of OVETT, the following year belonged to COE. It began one balmy July evening at Oslo, in the 800 metres.
1:43.40. So coming up to the finish line, and I think he's got it. Sebastian Coe doesn't know it, but certainly his British record is...
I crossed the line, I'm sort of leaning down, I've got my hands on my knees, and Rod came up to me and he, in no uncertain terms, told me what time I'd run with a few expletives in between. And I remember just jumping in the air and thinking, well, this is unbelievable. And I'd done a lap of honour before. I think it had truly sunk in.
A new world record for Great Britain and for Sebastian Coe.
It was breathtaking, and on top of that, there wasn't a hair out of place. He was just flying. He was just really in suddenly arrived in super condition.
Coe easing down slightly, but the time, 3 minutes 49 seconds, a new world record.
It was the end of an era for me, and it was the start of a new dream for a young boy that was coming on to be a world record holder.
Within the month, Coe was in Zurich. This time the distance was 1,500 metres, the metric mile.
They're roaring him on, and he's going to be very close. Tremendous run, and he's done it. Coe has smashed the world record.
Sebastian Coe had become the first person to hold the 800, 1,500 and mile world records at the same time, and he'd achieved it in just 41 days. He was the media's dream, a sports hero who was clean-cut, good-looking and prepared to talk to them.
He was gifted, gracious, he did everything right, totally opposite to OVETT, liked by the press, promoted himself to the media, wanted the media attention, and just did everything right.
We liked him because he cooperated with us. You know, he was available. And he would talk to you about his event, about his training, about anything, you know, and he didn't seem to hide anything. I mean, that was good copy for us all.
And keep the crowds back.
Well, I think it'll be a good day.
Sebastian Coe, you've given us enormous pleasure over the last week, so thank you very much indeed, and we couldn't wish you more than we do between now and next July.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very attractive young man.
Yes, you try going down to your athletics club on a Sunday morning after that's been said. Of course he was right.
And everyone wanted to know about Steve OVETT.
I think a lot of people are very curious about your relationship with Steve. What is it?
300 miles apart.
And is the name Steve OVETT ever mentioned at home?
Not at home, no.
Steve OVETT looms large in your life wherever you go.
But the rivalry was to make a difference. Coe knew OVETT was the one he'd have to beat when they finally met on the track in Moscow within the year.
On Christmas Day, when you'd done a training session and felt quite good about it while everybody else was tucking into their turkey and opening their presents, you then got to 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon and there was that nagging feeling that he was probably out there doing another 10 miles on the road.
The rivalry also had its effect on OVETT. He began to recognise the impact of Coe's world records.
Up until that point, Steve had just been happy to win races, and then suddenly Seb comes along, starts to push the barriers, if you like, and Steve was having to catch up to that.
Steve had never worried about records at times. He'd always said, you know, I'm just worried about winning. And then I think it came into him later on at the end of that year and early 80s, hey, maybe I ought to have a record, or I ought to go for these 5.